Hi. Apparently, Patreon is not a sustainable business. According to the Patreon CEO Jack Conte himself, here's an article on CNBC. It's a little bit old, so I'm a bit late to the party here. Patreon CEO says the company's generous business model is not sustainable as it sees rapid growth. Patreon needs to build new businesses and new services and new revenue lines in order to build a sustainable business. Wow! Patreon will send creators more than $500 million to fund their membership businesses in 2019. Wow! 500 million bucks. More than $1 billion will be paid out to creators since the company's inception in 2013. There are more than 3 million patrons supporting more than 100,000 creators on Patreon. How can Patreon not be sustainable? This is ludicrous. Let's find out. The company is also on track to pay out $500 million to content creators in 2019, pushing the company to surpass $1 billion in payout since its inception in 2013. So they've basically been paying out $500 million up until this point, with over the last, say, 5 years, with another $500 million to come in 2019. So they're certainly growing. Under the company's current business model, 90% of funds are paid directly to content creators. Patreon takes 5%, and the remaining 5% covers the transaction fees, depending on which credit card processing service is being used or whatever. And that's true. I can see that in my stats on Patreon. Patreon CEO Jack Conte said in an interview that the platform will soon be facing the challenge of maintaining a profitable model as the company continues its growth. As in, Patreon is a company that when it grows, it requires more funding to keep it going. It's a website that just offers basic middleman payment processing services, and along with a little bit of functionality, but it's basically just a website. The reality is Patreon needs to build new businesses and new services and new revenue lines in order to build a sustainable business. The company does not currently provide contracts, which allows users to retain 100% ownership of their work and full control of their brand. Well, I sure hope they don't plan on changing that, because if they do, they're sunk. Because it'll just be the multi-channel network all over again, and of course MCNs are failing across the board. It's just basically a dead business model. But they plan to provide creators with new value services like options for merchandising to generate new revenue. And creators will be given the opportunity to participate in these services. Gee, thanks, like the one I already have that's integrated with YouTube. Teespring integration with YouTube and merchandising integration and stuff like that. And there's countless platforms out there for content creators to do merch. You get emails when you're a content creator. You get flooded with emails from all these merchandising companies wanting you to join up with them to do merch. Seems that Patreon's a bit behind on the merch bandwagon. They're trying to catch up. Hey, wait up. Guys, wait up. Can we join too? We'll have to re-examine how we charge for new services as we put them out. Conte said with added revenue streams, the company will continue to redefine the space of creative content creation and aggregation, currently dominated by YouTube, Spotify, and other various subscription services. What the hell are they going to do? Start their own CDN, content delivery network, to compete with YouTube and Spotify? Unbelievably stupid if they're going to try and do that. And we won't get into the editorial controversies that plague Patreon over everyone's, like all major content creators are leaving, and Patreon shot themselves in the foot. But we won't get into that. Let's just find out how Patreon is not sustainable. This doesn't add up. So just looking at some stats for Patreon on Graphtreon here, which is an excellent website, by the way. Almost 5.2 million individual pledges, $12 million per month, but that doesn't include a lot of Patreon accounts hide how much they earn. But Patreon are saying it's more in the order of $500 million in 2019. So it's going to be like say 50 million a year instead of 12, because a lot of people hide that. So, you know, it's pretty much growing. They're doing pretty well. They've had a few little blips there, but so let's run some numbers here, and please double check, because I'm not that good at the arithmetics here. So by their own admission, they've bought in $500 million in the last 5 years, and they take a 5% cut of that. That's always been the case. So that's $25 million in the last 5 years. That's a pretty decent income. But in 2019, they plan to bring in $500 million again, just in the 1 year instead of the 5 years that they've been growing. So once again, that's $25 million income in 2019, just from their, well, they don't really have any other source of revenue that I'm aware of anyway. So $25 million a year income for a website that basically just is like a middleman, a payment processing middleman between content creators like myself and content consumers, the audience. And really, they don't do a huge amount. They don't host much content. It's pretty much just, you know, all text. If you go and have a look at my posts, for example, I often post videos early, and that's what most content creators do. Some content creators give like exclusive content and stuff like that, but it's not like they host the videos or the podcasts or anything like that. But most of the time, content creators use other platforms like YouTube to host videos and other audio content delivery services. For podcasts, for example, they don't actually use Patreons. So Patreon's basically just a big text-based website-y thing that sends out, I'm sure, you know, millions of emails and stuff like that. So I'm sure they need decent services, but, you know, it's not a huge content delivery network, so to speak. So it's not that hard. I'm not going to say it's easy to make a Patreon competitor, but geez, in the scheme of things, it's not that hard. They don't do a huge amount. But once the platform is built, it doesn't really cost them much, if anything more. Once they've built the website and it all works and runs smoothly, it doesn't cost them any more as they grow from like, say, 132,000 at the moment number of creators up to 500,000 or 1 million creators. It really, it's just some extra bandwidth on their website and storage servers and, you know, miscellaneous stuff, which is the cloud these days. It's not a huge expense. But of course, you've got costs associated with running a business, like employees and stuff like that. So let's look at LinkedIn here. They've got just over 300 employees at $25 million income. That's, you know, just like wages alone, that'd be, they could pay each employee $83,000 a year. That's a US, right? So that's a pretty decent wage. So I greatly doubt they're paying their employees on average $83,000 a year. But hey, you've got other expenses like big fancy, you know, apartments. Where are they based? Are they in, yeah, they're in San Francisco. Rent's expensive there. So, you know, you got those swanky buildings to house all your employees in. But basically $25 million a year for 300 employees. I'm not necessarily sure they need 300 employees to run such a website, really, in the scheme of things. And you don't need to scale proportionally with as you grow. If you've got 100,000 creators at the moment, if you get 200,000 creators, it's not like you suddenly need 600 employees instead of 300. It doesn't work like that. Most of the time, we just use your website. We don't need to contact. I don't think I've ever contacted somebody at Patreon. Like, I don't know. They just need a bunch of website techie nerds and a bunch of people who handle the financing and maybe a few support people and stuff like that. I don't know where the 300's coming from, but geez, maybe we should actually have a look at the job titles. So I'm just kind of finding it hard to believe that with $25 million cash income, consistent income from a subscription-based service, basically, that they can't profitably run a website that doesn't deliver a huge amount of content, really, doesn't need a huge amount of resources in the scheme of things, and a website that's already built and working, and you could just leave it and it'd be fine. It'll just be a cash cow. Moo! You can't do all that for $25 million a year. I don't know what it is. What could it... Oh, of course, the investors. Patreon have taken in over $100 million in investment money. First round back in 2013 when they started, $2 million. Okay, you get your initial seed capital and all that sort of stuff. You could have bootstrapped a business like this pretty darn easily. But anyway, okay, they accepted the money back then. Then they took in another $15 million in 2014 and another $29 million in 2016, and just on like a year and a half ago, they took on almost $60 million. So, yeah, unsustainable my ass. So, unsustainable business model, no. But in terms of return on for these investors, yes, it's unsustainable. You know, it's been almost a year and a half since I gave them the $60 million. You get the tap on your shoulder and you say, hey, psst, you know, we're expecting a 10-time return on this, or maybe, you know, we're after that magic unicorn, the magic $1 billion valuation, and we want to cash out. And where's this growth? We want to see the growth. $25 million a year income for $100 million invested? Not good enough. You're going to have to up the game. So therein lies the trap of venture capital funding. These people don't just want to double their money. They don't want to triple it. They might be happy with a 10-fold return on their money when they flip this sucker to the next sucker up the ladder who, but come on, Patreon, this is not a business that you should have invested in as a serious investor like this. Yes, it's a nice private business and a regular cash cow, moo, right? It's a fantastic business to be in. My ass, you can't make this sustainable with $25 million a year income. That's just complete and utter bullshit. The problem is the investors want a huge return and it's just not going to happen. So, sorry, Jack, but you took the money. And yeah, well, now you've got to scramble to try and make it bigger, change it, possibly hinting at here, perhaps in this article, that, there might be contracts for creators. Bullshit. I don't think Jack actually said that. That might be something that the author of this article's implying. But yeah, and it's, let's move to merch. Merch ain't going to do it either. Sorry, dude. It's just too many platforms out there, and creators already have their favorite merch platforms already set up. It's what? You're going to integrate with Teespring too? Woohoo, whoop-de-doo. They're going to create new value services. You already give me everything I want. As a content creator, you give me the ability to look at who my patrons are, to provide them exclusive content or early content and stuff like that. Like a private messaging type system. I can get all their contact details. It's better than PayPal, for example, when it's like harder just to maintain a list and push out content to early content, for example, to a bunch of random PayPal people. But ultimately, you already do exactly what I want. That's why you've been successful. For content creators, you're in the right place at the right time with the right kind of service. You took a quite reasonable fee. Nobody's really complaining hugely about the 10%. We can get it cheaper elsewhere, but it doesn't matter. For example, you can go into donate here on my website, and you can go in, and PayPal is an option. And PayPal, because I've got a business account with PayPal, and it only takes 2.2% or something, 2.4%. It's not much. So half of what, a quarter of what Patreon effectively take, but then I've got to transfer the currency and do all sorts of stuff. But anyway, there are cheaper options out there, but I like the services that Patreon actually provide, but it's nothing that a competitor that isn't tied to all this venture capital funding and is being pressured to grow and grow drastically, otherwise they're going to fold. Someone like Subscribestar, for example, which, yes, I just have my account approved on Subscribestar. I've currently got 2 subscribers, thanks for that, but I'll provide a link down below if you want to go over to Subscribestar, or if you're an entrepreneur and you're looking to start up you're a programmer or whatever, you want to start a good business and you won't think you can solve the problem and not get definanced by the likes of Patreon and Stripe and all the other payment processors, as what happened with Subscribestar, which is an absolute joke. There's currently a lawsuit going on about that anti-competitive type thing. But I don't think it's hugely difficult technically to come up with an alternative to Patreon, because you provide some nice services, like tiered stuff and things like that, but it's ultimately something some clever programmer in their basement can't do. So yeah, you better watch out, Patreon, because you took the money and now you might be paying for it. So one of the problems with building a competitive Patreon is, of course, the payment processes, because we've already seen Subscribestar being effectively shut down for a while. They are back in business now. They found an alternative, but they were shut down by effectively definanced by PayPal and Stripe, which is a credit card processor. And if you're starting up a competitor and you accept, PayPal from people, and you accept credit cards and stuff like that, and you also pay out creators with PayPal and all that sort of jazz, then, well, yeah, if you get shut down due to whatever reason that we won't go into, then yeah, it's not good. But ultimately, the future could be in crypto, of course. But of course, crypto is great, but the problem is most people don't have the ability to, they're not into crypto. They don't know how it works. They don't have the ability. They don't have accounts that are easy to transfer and that sort of stuff. It's only a very small percentage of people. That might, change in a few years' time, but it's probably going to take a lot longer for, for the general consumer to actually pick that up. So what's needed is a competitor that seamlessly takes crypto in the forms of just regular credit cards, but then you come back to the same and then converts it into crypto and changes it over. But then you've got the same system. If you get shut down for whatever reason by these payment processors, yeah, it's pretty hard to find alternatives. Anyway, I, along with many other creators, do accept direct crypto donations. Lots of choose your flavor. So it'd actually be cool if there was a crypto, even just a bare bones crypto competitor to Patreon that actually had like different tiered levels and membership levels, and you can like a similar sort of functionality, but it simply accepted crypto from people and then paid it back to us creators in crypto and stuff like that. But once again, it's it's just the numbers quite aren't there yet, but it'd still be cool. So Jack, you're in a bit of a pickle. You took the VC money and now they want their pound of flesh. Congratulations. Yeah, you're not doing so well. Oops. So I don't see how Patreon can expand as much as they need to, or even close to it, without screwing the creators. So, yeah, they're between a rock and a hard place. So whether or not that's going to lead to, some cost cutting at Patreon, layoffs and things like that to make it a bit more sustainable, because I don't see where else it's going to come from, these value services. Good luck with that, Jack. Anyway, let us know what you think the future of Patreon is down below. Hope you enjoyed it. Catch you next time.